Hello, Canada. Welcome back to another edition of the Canadian Citizen Journal. I'm your host, alias Tagai. Well, we got a few things we're going to dabble on. Once again, Canada is... I have no idea how these people get elected. We're going to kind of go through a couple provinces and their hypocrisy, starting with EB and his simplicity. I don't understand how people have no idea about our history. The hypocrisy coming from him never ceases to amaze me and a lot of Canadians. We're also going to talk a little bit about Quebec and their anti-pipeline law and how they not only hold Canada back, take all of our money, but they also force us to do the most anti-Canadian thing possible, and that is import blood oil, which, of course, the Liberal government doesn't seem to have a problem with either. We're also going to dabble a little bit about France, some Romania, a few other things, and maybe a couple funny ha-has, maybe funny disgusting once again. Let's just start off with EB, another low IQ, simple man. Take it away with your stupidity, EB.
We're going to ensure that the Americans understand how pissed off we are.
In another tariff response measure, the BC government is set to introduce legislation that would allow the province to charge U.S. commercial trucks driving to Alaska through BC. Premier David Eby made the announcement shortly after the U.S. paused tariffs on some Canadian goods, but Eby said Canada shouldn't let up until the threat of tariffs is completely off the table.
My message for the Prime Minister, for my colleagues across the country, and it's one I'm sure they want to deliver to me too, is stand strong. We are not going to accept these continual threats, this continued uncertainty. We're going to stand up for Canadians. This is unacceptable.
Eby said new legislation will also mandate that low-carbon fuels added to gasoline and diesel be produced in Canada and remove interprovincial trade barriers between provinces and territories.
The chaos and the swings back and forth, the tariffs are on, the tariffs are off, the threats, the orders rescinded, put in place. It's all a deliberate tactic to weaken our resolve, and it will not work.
Eby said American liquor from red state.
So he's also he's not pro-pipeline. He keeps throwing twists and curves into this, how it's got to be the only time that a pipeline can go through is if it's produced by a zero carbon footprint industry and a bunch of other absolutely ridiculous notions. And he lives in La La Land. So let's just take a little refresher course on some Canadian history here. And it deals a lot with what Trump was trying to say about wanting and protecting North America's sovereignty as a whole. Canada has lost their bloody minds. Okay, refresher course in history.
This is no ordinary highway. We're in the Yukon, and this road stretches for more than 2,000 kilometers, the equivalent of the distance from Toronto to Orlando, Florida. From far on the other side of the Rocky Mountains, all the way into Alaska. It's been called one of the greatest engineering feats of modern times. But this Canadian highway wasn't built by Canadians. It was built by a foreign army at a time when what happened here in the remote Canadian North had the potential to change the course of world history. This is the Alaska Highway. This is Canadiana. In 1941, the Japanese attack Pearl Harbor, and the United States suddenly finds itself in the middle of the Second World War.
Since the unprovoked and dastardly attack by Japan, a state of war has existed between the United States and the Japanese Empire.
With Japan extending its reach across the Pacific, Alaska seems very vulnerable. The Americans desperately need to send weapons and supplies north, but it won't be easy. There are about 2,000 kilometers of Canada in the way.
We will gain the inevitable triumph, so help us God.
Thankfully, the two close allies were already working on a solution, and this little airport was part of it. They called it the Northwest Staging Route, a series of remote airfields and landing strips stretching across northern Alberta, BC, and the Yukon, letting American planes hop from one Canadian runway to another as they made the long trip north to Alaska. But it didn't take long for the sad truth to become clear. The Northwest Staging Route wasn't working. It was a long and dangerous journey. Inexperienced pilots were no match for the harrowing flight through the extreme winter weather of the north. On the first attempt, 38 planes took off for Alaska. 27 of them crashed. And that failure was felt around the world because the route to Alaska wasn't just supposed to help the US fend off Japan, it was also going to play an important role in the Allies' war against Hitler. Months earlier, the Nazis had invaded the Soviet Union, and while American planes were crashing into the mountains of the Yukon, the Germans were pushing deeper and deeper into Russia. Soviet soldiers were dying by the millions in the fight against Germany. They needed help, and they needed it fast. The Allies were already sending weapons and supplies, including hundreds of warplanes. But getting those airplanes all the way to the front lines in Russia was incredibly difficult. The long, vulnerable shipping routes were prime targets for Nazi submarines and the Japanese Air Force. It would be much more effective just to fly the planes up through the Yukon to Alaska and then straight on into Siberia. If only they could get them there without crashing. So Canada and the US teamed up on a new plan. Canada would allow the American Army to put an American highway on Canadian soil. The new road would link all the airfields together. It would allow truckloads of weapons and supplies to head north, and it would strengthen the Northwest Staging Route, making it easier to resupply and therefore easier to fly. So, this highway would allow the US to defend Alaska, while the Soviet Union would also get the help they needed in their fight against Hitler. The United States would pay for it. American soldiers would build it. And until the end of the war, when it was handed over to Canada, the highway would essentially be American territory. Canadians wouldn't even be allowed to drive on it without a special permit. But building it in the first place would be hell. Construction started in March.
Well, there you go. Just a little bit of a history lesson. And now EB is going to think that he's going to start taxing trucks that are using highways going up to Alaska. Not only did this highway help Canada, it helped the States. It stopped us from speaking German and raising our arm at a 45-degree angle, saluting dictators and murderers. Those who forget the past are condemned to repeat it. I cannot say that often enough. And EB has no history at all, nor does any other politician in the Liberal NDP. These people are simple. Trump has said since he got elected that North American security is top of mind. And after losing the largest airbase close to China where they produce their nuclear weapons, thanks to the Biden administration, He's looking for another place in order to secure and have the ability for first contact. Canada has that potential, but our Liberal NDP have destroyed our national security, has decimated our military. Trump knows this. A lot of other countries know this. But for some reason, Canadians seem to be quite simple. And I think they're too busy teaching DEI and not enough teaching history. We shouldn't be arguing and fighting and doing ridiculous things like trying to tax highways for Americans to drive through, or picking fights over tariffs that are actually unfair. Why don't we work together? Instead, you're being gaslit. The media is gaslighting you. It's propaganda. Fear, hate, and division. You need to make sure you like, share, and subscribe and get it out there. Not just me, but other people who put their homework down below. Don't cut and clip. Don't lie. Don't deceive. And just tell you the truth. Now, about the whole green that he's pushing for these pipelines, that no pipeline will go through unless it comes from a zero emission producer. I think not only does he have a problem with history, he can't remember what happened less than a couple months ago.
On December 28, 2024, a massive fire broke out at West Shore Coal Terminal in Delta, British Columbia.
Yeah, somebody got to meet the water truck, the fire truck. Yeah, when we get here, I'm waiting at the gate.
We are a huge distributor of coal. And where does it go? It goes to China. China produces almost 50% of the toxic emissions. And who's supplying it? EB. Every pipeline we put through will reduce the global emissions. So all the greeners out there who are screaming, no pipelines, no LNG, keep it in the ground. You guys are idiots. In the last 9 years, you have caused more damage to the environment than any pipeliner could possibly imagine. If we could stop exporting this crap and give them cleaner, more fuel efficient energy, we could actually start helping the planet instead of doing what they're doing, which is speeding up the carbon emissions. Jackasses. These people are idiots. Now let's move on to another hypocrite. This guy is daft. Quebec has held Canada back for generations. It's not necessarily the people. I can't blame them because, like I've said on other episodes, the worst lying and divisive media is in Quebec. I've witnessed it. I've traveled coast to coast for a long time, and Quebec is the worst. They live in their own little bubble, and it's going to burst if they keep going down this path because the West is getting sick and tired of it, and the separation movement, believe it or not, is exploding. I have never seen it as high as it is today. And since Carney got elected yesterday, wow, it has gone up substantially. Listen to stupidity at its highest form.
Yesterday, the Liberal Party seemed to be warming up to the idea of building a pipeline through Quebec. Jean Chrétien actually said that in his speech yesterday. Will that be part of the Bloc campaign? Because, well, it could have not been part of the campaign previously, but I think we have to call on people's intelligence here. The idea of an oil pipeline crossing Quebec to go to the east east coast would have no economic benefit for Quebec.
See? Pardon me? You have received the equalized payments since it first got created. You've received more per capita than all the rest of Canada combined. We're tired of you sucking our nipple dry. This is intolerable. And this is stupidity at the highest level. This guy is nuts.
And people in the Atlantic region are supplied with gas and oil and so forth from others. Now, the idea is to...
Okay. Right now, there's a list of 16 countries. 16 countries left because Trump is going around to other countries. There was 17, and he's securing LNG deals with them. He's, like I said, he's surrounding Canada. He's taking away our future. This is how you crush a bad economy and a socialist government. You do it with freedom. You go out, you work cheap, you work efficient, and you do it with a free market. Not like our country. Not like a fascist government is doing to us. So about that oil is being supplied by other countries, he says. Once again, this man is a complete idiot.
He has moved to put sanctions on Russian oil since Russia invaded Ukraine in February of 2022. So it may come as a surprise to many that Russian crude oil is still making its way to Canada and to the United States. To tell us why this is happening, we're joined by Isaac Levy, team lead at the Center for Research on Energy and Clean Air. Isaac, thanks a lot for joining us. This does come as a surprise to me, and I'm sure to many viewers as well. How is it that Russian crude oil is making its way to Canada, and is it being refined in refineries here?
Thanks very much for having me on your show. As you probably know, Canada was the first country globally to implement sanctions directly on Russian oil. So this prohibited the import of crude oil and refined oil such as diesel and jet fuel. However, once these sanctions were implemented on direct importation of Russian oil, the refining loophole remains, which is a legal mechanism by which Russian crude oil can turn up in countries such as India and Turkey, be refined into products like we mentioned, diesel, jet fuel, and then legally be sold to Canada. And we've seen a rise of Canada's imports of oil products from those refineries in India and Turkey that run partially on Russian crude of 2.5 times in the most recent year of 2024 compared to pre-invasion levels of 2021.
So it's actually increased. Our country is run by idiots, absolute idiots. The West has been screaming about this for generations. Why are we supporting communistic dictatorship and monarchies that are the worst possible governments on their people when we could be supplying our own energy to everybody in Canada? Not only at a cheaper rate than they're paying now, but all the money is circular. It stays in our economy. It makes total sense. Math don't lie. And once again, we're hearing the same gaslighting. Well, it's too late now. Why bother? This is the same thing they've said for generations. They keep doing it over and over and over. And the people in the cities who have no way to get real media or live in their own bubble suck it up and believe it. It's horsepucky. All of it is horsepucky. We're going to move on. This is what happens when you don't have pipelines.
We begin with a dramatic incident in the North Sea off the UK, where a cargo ship has collided with a tanker carrying aviation fuel, causing both vessels to explode into flames. Medics assessed 36 people on the scene. None required hospital treatment, but the scale of the environmental impact is yet to be determined. Let's take you through what we know so far this morning. The collision came when a cargo ship, the Solong, ran into a tanker chartered by the US military, the Stena Immaculate, which was sitting at anchor off the East Yorkshire coast. Other ships in the area responded to the incident and more than 30 casualties were brought ashore shortly afterwards. It happened about 10 miles, about 16 k's off the coast during what's been described as foggy conditions. The website Marine Traffic, which monitors ships moving around the globe, captured the moment the two ships collided. The Coast Guard alerted vessels in the area to the incident, warning that the Stena was carrying fuel which had caught fire.
Solong has collided with tanker Stena Immaculate in the outer anchorage. Both vessels are abandoning. Vessels who have firefighting...
So let's just keep on buying blood oil and having this happen on our oceans that we all share. Once again, the hypocrisy is sickening. Let's move on to another topic, which is the green machine Mr. Carney, who likes to spew lies about how he's such a green environmentalist. This is the furthest thing from the truth. And I'm proud to say that I've been contacted by a few people who follow me, and they have actually divested funds through their RSPs to make sure that they are not supporting Brookfield. They saw it was almost a documentary, it's a little bit long, I think 45 minutes that I did, all about Carney and Brookfield. And I broke major stories showing how they are burning the rainforests. Yes, they're the ones who, when everybody was complaining 7 years ago and 5 years ago that Brazil is on fire, it was Brookfield that was doing it. While our prime minister was green. Oh, green, this is the end of the world, we gotta stop it. And it was the same guy who was his economic advisor that they're all making millions of dollars off of. These are the guys that are destroying the planet. Canada needs to wake up. You've got to share. Get the truth out. Make it part of your conversations. Absolutely insane, Mark Carney. This guy is a loon. Listen carefully. Somebody made a nice short clip of it, and I just figured I'd share it one more time just to keep the knowledge out there.
For years, Mark Carney has traveled around the globe promoting carbon taxes, styling himself a champion of the environment. But what is Mark Carney's real environmental record? As chair of Brookfield Asset Management, his company was responsible for the deforestation of 9,000 hectares of land in Brazil, right on the border with the Amazon rainforest. That's well over 22,000 acres of wilderness destroyed. And the report found that Carney's deforestation of the land was equivalent to the CO2 produced by 1.2 million flights between New York and London. Also, Mark Carney's multi-billion-dollar company could make a few extra bucks. That's right. While Mark Carney was demanding that you pay more because you're destroying the planet, he was profiting off the destruction of one of the world's most vital and delicate habitats. Mark Carney is no environmentalist. He's a pathological liar. He cannot be trusted to put Canada and our environment ahead of his own personal profits.
And now he is our prime minister. The first dictator, actual dictator in Canadian history. And I got a lot of people who are like, oh, but look at what they did to Campbell years ago. She was a sitting MP, people. She at least was voted into her seat, and she was also deputy prime minister. And guess what? Conservatives had the first female prime minister. How does that make you feel, Liberals? When you guys just elected a prime minister that not only isn't elected, has no right to be, can't even go into parliament legally, but he beat out by what, 85%? A couple women liberals who were running, let alone Ruby Dahlia, who they kicked out of the party and took all of her money and won't give it back. The Liberal Party is a lying machine. Everything they say, they do the opposite of. Everything. You can't trust a word coming out of them, especially the blowhorn media CBC, CTV, and the rest of them who take checks from our government and from our taxes to keep lying to us. This should be what's on the news. Instead, you kick on it, the news, and all they're talking about is, oh, Carney this, Carney that, he's so great, blah, blah, blah. Gaslighting you, people. Gaslighting you. Now, France they're having issues. Macron got on and he did a public broadcast about how he's going to protect Ukraine and put feet on the ground if necessary, as well as a nuclear option. Again, psychotic people. He's part of the WEF and the global elite. And France is slowly catching on. And now there is thousands of people marching in the streets, pissed. And it's only getting bigger and bigger by the hour. People are starting to pour out of their houses and apartments and marching on the streets. They want Macron gone. Now in Romania, the courts, who are absolutely corrupt like ours, have removed the front runner who won the first election in Romania. And the people are tired of this. They've been rioting lots, and again, I featured it on earlier episodes, but this is starting to get out of hand. And now they've called the riot police, just like our idiot Trudeau did to innocent Canadians, and they're starting to beat the living daylights out of protesters who are fighting for democracy and freedom. They couldn't find any illegal votes that were used for him. They couldn't find any proof that there was Russian collusion. They couldn't find any proof to kick him out, but they still did. And now we're going to probably see a civil war in Romania. From what I've read so far, it sounds like, just like France, people are pouring out of the streets, and the more and more, every hour, the people are matching the police force that is beating these people up. And all they're trying to do is protest the courts and the system to let this guy in. They're tired of the corruption. They see it just like we do in Canada, just like they saw in the States. At least the States actually turned around and changed their government, who's exposing everything. And what are we doing? We're allowing our media to gaslight us, to blatantly lie to us. If you think at any point in time that's a free election in Canada and a democracy, you're wrong. And one other thing, I want a lot of these people, I do from TikToks and other social media. People, you got to read your history. This whole, we have a Westminster Parliament, you don't vote a prime minister. Yes, you do. Don't lie to yourself. Think carefully about it. The Liberals were decimated until Trudeau came in, and with millions upon millions of dollars of foreign influence, they started fleecing the people, especially with their bought media, and the people didn't vote for the Liberal representatives in the riding, they were voting for Trudeau. That's the way it works. Do you want to know why O'Toole didn't do very well with the Conservative voters? Because he started saying the same things that Trudeau was already implementing, and Conservatives went, well, that's not a Conservative, so they didn't vote for their MP. Quit being a bunch of idiots. Yes, we have a Westminster parliamentary system. It is not what you think it is. Quit listening to these idiots like Chrysler Freeland who go and say how much better our system is than the States. It's just as screwed. We need to fix it. We need massive change. We're the only system with Westminster Parliament that has not added or changed rules to protect its citizen out of all of the Commonwealth nations. Wake up, Canada. Now we're going to move on to the funny disgusting, which again is in Regina. This guy. Regina is getting out of control. There were actually 2 or 3 other videos that I just chose not to put on because of what was happening, like a guy in the bus threatening to cause serious harm to people, who was later arrested. The drug epidemic is taking over our nation. We have to stop the fentanyl problem. And the more people keep saying, well, Canada doesn't have a major fentanyl thing, the deeper the hole you're digging. We need to fix Canada, people.
He's got a sicko. Why the fuck was he on his car, bro? Who is it?
Really? It's cold.
It's cold.
GG's. This guy's fucked. What the? Yo! Send it to Justin. What the fuck?
Oh, the piece right there. The piece right there.
This guy's naked.
Yo, stay here. Watch my hands.
Why is this guy naked? Yo, he's dead ass. He's got a sicko.
Canada has problems. It's never been as bad as it is. This is what you get. It's called the domino effect when you have a socialist that turns fascist government. We've got to get these liberal NDP. We got to wipe them off the map. We got to wipe them off the map, and hopefully, like I keep saying, the next party that takes over has the balls to actually start looking into the corruption and arresting people and charging people and exposing all of the corruption and the Chinese infiltration within those parties so that they can rebuild, because you can't have a one-party system. That's how tyranny takes over. We need to rebuild these parties back to what they used to be. Well, actually, the NDP, they were always a socialist government. They keep laying on the backs of unions. Unions get sucked right into this when really they're the worst possible thing that a union would want in power. But they're union reps. They get money. They fund it. It's back and forth. Once again, at least unions are waking up this time around. Singh has really exposed the fascist that he is and how he's held Canada. He's literally held us back. He's allowed all of this to happen. It's absolutely crazy. I really don't understand Canada. A lot of people are losing faith. I love my country. We've got to really step up to the plate here, people. We've got to make a difference, and the only way to do it is to get out and vote. So for all those people who don't vote, your vote is important. Every vote is important. Sometimes the ridings are so close they can be between 13 and 20 votes. That handful of people that have never voted before, if you come out and you vote for change, we can have change. It is very plausible and possible. We just need help. We need everybody to get out and do your part. And you can start by liking, sharing, and subscribing. And if you are, punch that notification bell so you don't miss any future episodes. You've been watching the Canadian Citizen Journal. Until next time, I'm Alias Tagai. I'm going out to do some snowshoeing in this beautiful 6 inches of fresh snow that we got out here. Take care.